All right, and we are right back at it. Welcome back to another session of Sister for Sister Story Time with your favorite sister, Shia Fire. That's my head wrap. Anywho, so yes, we are continuing with the Moabite, the location and the crimes against them, the crimes that they have committed against the Israelites as well as other peoples in the surrounding areas. Okay, so we left off talking about the Chumashites of California. And these people just so happen to be in the area where they do most of the human sacrifices. Hollywood, okay, California, the one of the largest locations for Satan worship. Okay. Now, sacrifices include taking um, the path of other people's. 144 on the timer. The thing that the biggest issue with the heathen nations was that they tried to stop the Israelites from getting into the promised land. Okay, everybody had their own proportions. Everybody had enough land for themselves. And people just are greedy. 7 deadly sins. Okay. So we're going to continue to talk about these Native Americans and where they, their origins, as well as their relatives, descendants. Who are they now? Who are they today? And where are they located? Okay, so what is this? We're not gonna get in that just yet. Let's see what I have here. And then these so-called deities that they worship, they come in many different names. So we want to figure out all the different names and variations of these deities. Hey, no. You should have been saying that. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the plains of Moab. What you want to know? Nothing we know. Yes, the plains of Moab, Jordan, and Jericho. The plains of Moab. Okay, let me not get ahead of myself here. Revelations, the beast out of the sea. Okay, so just gonna pause. Let's see what the last 2,000,000 years has to say about the plains of Moab. Bear with me, bear with me. And now I can't find it. It's Chumash. So annoying. Alright, I'm just gonna pull it up. Alright. Let's see if I can share it. What the heck is going on? All right, the plains of Moab. Mm-mm-mm. Don't freeze up on me. Okay. Sorry about the delay. The screen clearly doesn't want to be shared, so I'm just going to read it. So this is Bible Maps. BibleAtlas.org, the plains of Moab opposite Jericho. Okay, so the occurrences. Numbers 35:15. The two tribes and the half tribe received their inheritance beyond the Jordan at Jericho, eastward toward the sunrise. Numbers 34:29. These are they whom Yahweh commanded to divide the inheritance to the children of Israel in the land of Canaan. 35:1. Yahweh spoke to Moses in the plains of Moab by the Jordan at Jericho, saying, Speak to the children of Israel and tell them, when you pass over the Jordan into the land of Canaan, you shall give 3 cities beyond the Jordan, and you shall give 3 cities in the land of Canaan. They shall be cities of refuge. These are the commandments and the ordinances which Yahweh commanded by Moses to the children of Israel in the plains of Moab by the Jordan at Jericho. This is the encyclopedia. So, Jericho, the word occurs in 2 forms. In the Pentateuch, in 2 Kings 25, verse 5, and in Ezra, Nehemiah, Chronicles, it is written Jericho with a Y, Yerecho, or Yericho elsewhere. In 1 Kings 16 and 34, the final Hebrew letter is He, or the H, instead of a Wa, the W. The termination Wa, thought to preserve the peculiarities of the Old Canaanite dialect. In the Septuagint, we have the indeclinable form Ericho, that's with the Iericho. Sweet has the form Ericho as well, both with and without the feminine article. In the New Testament, Ericho, once with the feminine article, the Arabic is Riha, Eriha. According to Deuteronomy 32:49, it stood opposite of Nebo, while in 34:3, it is called a city grove of palm trees. It was surrounded with a wall, Joshua 2:15, and provided with a gate which was closed at night, Joshua 2, verse 5, and was ruled over by a king. When captured, vessels of brass and iron, large quantities of silver and gold, and a goodly Babylonish garment were found in it. It was on the western side of the Jordan, not far from the camp of Israel at Shittim, before crossing the river. The city was on the plains, but so close to the mountain on the west, probably the cliffs of Quarantania, the traditional scene of Christ's temptation, that it was within easy reach of the spies, protected by Rahab. It was in the lot of Benjamin, the border of which ascended to the slope. English versions of the Bible say side of Jeremiah on the north. Authorities are generally agreed in locating the ancient city at Tel es Sultan, a mile and a half northwest of modern Jericho. Here, there is a mound 1,200 feet long and 50 feet in height, supporting 4 smaller mounds, the highest of which is 90 feet above the base of the main mound. The geological situation, the Jordan Valley, sheds great light upon the capture of the city by Joshua. If the city was built as we suppose it to have been, upon the unconsolidated sedimentary deposits which accumulated to a great depth in the Jordan Valley during the enlargement of the Dead Sea, which took place in Pleistocene or glacial times, the sudden falling of the walls becomes easily credible to anyone who believes in the personality of God and in his power either to foreknow the future or to direct at his will the secondary causes with which man has to deal in nature. The narrative does not state that the blowing of the rams' horns of themselves affected the falling of the walls. It was simply said that at a specified juncture, on the seventh day, the walls would fall, and that they actually fell at that juncture. The miracle may, therefore, be regarded as either that of prophecy, in which the Creator, by foretelling the course of things to Joshua, secured the junction of divine and human activities, which constitutes a true miracle, or we may regard the movements which brought down the walls to be the result of direct divine action, such as is exerted by man when he produces an explosion of dynamite at a particular time. Okay. So again, we may regard the movements which brought down the walls to be the result of direct divine action, such as is exerted by man when he produces an explosion of dynamite at a particular time and place. The phenomena are just such as occurred in the earthquake of San Francisco in 1906, where, according to the report of the scientific commission appointed by the state, the most violent destruction of buildings was on the made ground. This ground seems to have behaved during the earthquake very much in the same way as jelly in a bowl or as a semi-liquid in a tank. Santa Rosa, situated on the valley floor, underlain to a considerable depth by loose or slightly coherent geological formations. 20 miles from the rift was the most severely shaken town in the state and suffered the greatest disaster relatively to its population and extent. Thus, an earthquake such as is easily provided for along the margin of this great Jordan crevice would produce exactly the phenomena here described, and its occurrence at the time and place foretold to Joshua constitutes it a miracle of the first magnitude. Now, it's very funny that even in this, it's talking about California. So, notwithstanding the curse pronounced in Joshua 6:26, the King James Version, prophesying that whosoever should rebuild the city, he shall lay the foundations thereof in his firstborn. It was rebuilt, 1 Kings 16:34, by Hiel the Bethelite in the days of Ahab. The curse was literally fulfilled. Still, David's messengers are said to have tarried at Jericho in his day. 2 Samuel 10, verse 5, 1 Chronicles 19 and 5. In Elisha's time, 2 Kings 2, verse 5, there was a school of prophets there, while several other references to this city occur in the Old Testament and the Apocrypha, 2 Chronicles 28, verse 15, where it is called the city of palm trees. 2 Kings 25, verse 5, Jeremiah 39, verse 5, Ezra 2, verse 34, Nehemiah 3, verse 2, and Nehemiah 7, verse 36, also 1 Maccabees 9, verse 50. Josephus describes it and the fertile plain surrounding it in glowing terms. In the time of Christ, it was an important place yielding a large revenue to the royal family. But the city which Herod rebuilt was on a higher elevation, at the base of the western mountain, probably at Beit Juber, where there are the ruins of a small fort. Jericho was the place of rendezvous for Galilean pilgrims desiring to avoid Samaria, both in going to and in departing from Jerusalem, and it has been visited at all times by thousands of pilgrims who go down from Jerusalem to bathe in the Jordan. The road leading from Jerusalem to Jericho is still infested by robbers who hide in the rocky caverns adjoining it and appear without warning from the tributary gorges of the wadis which dissect the mountain wall. At the present time, Jericho and the region about is occupied only by a few hundred miserable inhabitants, deteriorated by the torrid climate which prevails at the low level about the head of the Dead Sea. But the present barrenness of the region is largely due to the destruction of the aqueducts which formerly distributed over the plain the waters brought down through the wadis which descend from the mountains of Judea. The ruins of many of these are silent witnesses of the cause of its decay. 12 aqueducts at various levels formerly branched from the Wadi Kelt, irrigating the plain both north and south. Remains of Roman masonry are found in these. In the Middle Ages, they were so repaired that an abundance and variety of crops were raised, including wheat, barley, millet, figs, grapes, and sugarcane. And now we're going to go back to this is the Wikipedia. The plains of Moab. The plains of Moab, literally dry areas of Moab, are mentioned in 3 books of the Hebrew Bible, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and Joshua, as an area in Transjordan. Stretching along the Jordan across from Jericho, and more specifically from Beth Jeshimoth to Abel Shittim. Here is the last station of the Exodus and the place from which Moses climbs up on Mount Nebo to the top of Pisgah, where he dies. Oh, I think we did read this, but Spirit said, read it again. So Nelson Gluck describes the plains of Moab as having the shape of a truncated heart. And now, me and my son took the United States map and was looking at it, and he pointed to Maine. Maine kind of looks like a heart, and then the truncated heart would be shorter than normal. So I went over and was looking at Vermont and whatever state that is next to it. but we shall see. Uh, Now, with its northern limit marked by Wadi Nimrin and the southern tip created by the Moab Hills, south of Wadi El Azimah, which stretch out from the Moab Plateau toward the northeast end of the Dead Sea, closing off the plains. Gluck names the three main streams crossing the plains toward the Jordan as, from north to south, Wadi Nimrin, which before emerging from the hills is called Wadi Sha'ib, Wadi El Kefren, and Wadi Rama, called Wadi Hezbon in the hills, which merges with Wadi El Kefren 2/3 of the way across the plains. So now we're going to go into the plains of Moab in Ohio. Hmm. What is this? Okay, so it doesn't want to give it to me yet. Okay, so again, Moab was an ancient Levantine kingdom whose territory is today located in southern Jordan. The land is mountainous and lies alongside much of the eastern shore of the Dead Sea. The existence of the kingdom of Moab. The existence of the kingdom of Moab is attested to by numerous archaeological findings, most notably the Mesha Stele, which describes the Moabite victory over an unnamed son of King Omri of Israel, an episode also noted in 2 Kings 3. The Moabite capital was Dibon or Dibon. According to the Hebrew Bible, Moab was often in conflict with its Israelite neighbors to the west. You got to get that judgment. The etymology of the word Moab is uncertain. The earliest gloss is found in the Koine Greek Septuagint, Genesis 19 and 37, which explains the name in obvious allusion to the account of Moab's parentage, from my father. Other etymologies which have been proposed regard it as a corruption of seed of a father, or as a participle form from to desire, thus connoting the desirable land. Rashi explains the word Moab to mean from the father, since Ab in Hebrew and Arabic and other Semitic languages means father. He writes that as a result of the immodesty of Moab's name, God did not command the Israelites to refrain from inflicting pain upon the Moabites in the manner in which he did with regard to the Ammonites. Fritz Hommel regards Moab as an abbreviation of Moab, which equals his mother is his father. What the hell? The history. Bronze Age. The existence of the kingdom of Moab prior to the rise of the Israelite state has been deduced from a colossal statue erected at Luxor by Pharaoh Ramses II in the 13th century BCE. The statue lists Muab, or Muab, among a series of nations conquered during a campaign. The nucleus of the early Moabite state appears to have been located in several settlements between Wadi el Wale, Wale, and Wadi Mojib, which originated in the late Bronze Age. Four inscriptions from the time of Ramses II mention MWIBW as a rebellious place that refuses to recognize Egypt's control over Canaan, and together with the Shasu of Mount Seir, conducted raids in Egypt. Pharaoh sent troops to the area and suppressed the rebellion. In the inscriptions of Ramses II, the inhabitants are shown as having hairstyles identical to those of neighboring Canaanites, long hair collected and arranged, and not a braided hairstyle like the Shasu from later reliefs that contain the name Moab. A possible explanation is that the MWIBW, if it was indeed the land of Moab, was at that time inhabited by a pre Moabite population, whereas the historical Moabites settled in the area only in the 12th century BCE. Naaman argued, however, that the identification of the MWIBW, Muibwa, whatever, with the biblical land of Moab can no longer be upheld. The former was more likely well to the north. Kenneth Kitchen later responded to Naaman, reasserting the identification of MWIBW with Moab. The Iron Age. The 9th century BCE Mesha Stele recounts that King Mesha built up an open sanctuary in Querico, Qeriho, cultic area of Devon, conquered the Israelite territory north of Wadi el Wale with the cities of Medeba, Ataroth, and Nebo, as well as Jahaz, east of Moab, and rebuilt the towns of Baal Meon, Kirjatan, Aurora, Beth Bamoth, Bezer, Medeba, Diblaton, and his hometown, Dibon. An 8th century BCE inscription seems to indicate that the kingdom of Moab expanded into the eastern part of the Jordan Valley after a successful campaign against the Ammonites. In the Nimrod clay inscription of Tiglath-Pileser III, 745 to 727 BCE, the Moabite king Salmanu, perhaps the Shalman who sacked Beth Arbel and Hosea 10 and 14, is mentioned as tributary to Assyria. Sargon II mentions on a clay prism a revolt against him by Moab together with Philistia, Judah, and Edom. But on the Taylor prism, which recounts the expedition against Hezekiah, Kamusa Nabdi, or Chumash Nadab, king of Moab, brings tribute to Sargon as his suzerain. Musuri, king of Moab, sounds like Missouri, paid a tribute to Asar-Haddon at the same time as Manasseh of Judah, Coscabar of Edom, and other kings of the Levant. They send building materials to Nineveh. Moab military supported Assurbanipal during his campaign against Egypt and the pharaoh Taharka. The status of vassal of Assyria allows Moab to benefit in return from the support of Assyria against the nomadic tribes of the Arabian desert, and in particular against the Kedarites. King Kameshalta seemed to have defeated Amaladi, king of Kedar. Decline. After the Roman conquest of the Levant by Pompey in 63 BCE, Moab lost its distinct identity through assimilation. What is that? What happened? Okay. Uh, 19th century travelers. Early modern travelers in the region included Ulrich Jasper Seetzen, 1805, Johann Ludwig Burckhardt, 1812, Charles Leonard Irby and James Mangles, 1818, and Louis Felicien de Saussure, 1851. Biblical narratives. According to the biblical account, Moab and Ammon were born to Lot and Lot's elder and younger daughters, respectively, in the aftermath of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. The Bible refers to both the Moabites and Ammonites as Lot's sons born of incest with his daughters. Genesis 19:37 to 38. The Moabites first inhabited the rich highlands at the eastern side of the chasm of the Dead Sea, extending as far as Wadi Mujib to Wadi Hassa, from which country they expelled the Emim, the original inhabitants, Deuteronomy 2 and 11. But they themselves were afterward driven southward by warlike tribes of Amorites who had crossed the river Jordan. These Amorites, described in the Bible as being ruled by King Sihon, confined the Moabites to the country south of the river Arnon, which formed their northern boundary. Numbers 21:13 and Judges 11:18. God renewed his covenant with the Israelites at Moab before the Israelites entered the promised land, Deuteronomy 29, verse 1. Moses died there, Deuteronomy 34 and 5, prevented by God from entering the promised land. He was buried in an unknown location in Moab, and the Israelites spent a period of 30 days there in mourning, Deuteronomy 34, verses 6 through 8. According to the book of Judges, uh, the Israelites did not pass through the land of the Moabites, Judges 11:18, but conquered Sihon's kingdom and his capital at Heshbon. After the conquest of Canaan, the relations of Moab with Israel were of a mixed character, sometimes warlike and sometimes peaceable. With the tribe of Benjamin, they had at least one severe struggle in union with their kindred, the Ammonites and the Amalekites. Judges 3:12 through 30. The Benjamite Shophet Ehud ben Gera assisted the Moabite king Eglon and led an Israelite army against the Moabites at a ford of the Jordan River, killing many of them. The book of Ruth testifies to friendly relations between Moab and Bethlehem, one of the towns of the tribe of Judah. By his descent from Ruth, David may be said to have been part Moabite. He committed his parents to the protection of the king of Moab, who may have been his kinsman, when hard pressed by King Saul. 1 Samuel 22:3 and 4. But here, all friendly relations stop forever. The next time the name is mentioned is the account of David's war, who made the Moabites tributary, 2 Samuel 8 verse 2, 1 Chronicles 18 and 2. Moab may have been under the rule of an Israelite governor during this period. Among the exiles who returned to Judea from Babylonia were a clan descended from Pahath Moab, whose name means ruler of Moab. The Moabite Ruth is regarded as a prototype of a convert to Judaism. At the disruption of the kingdom under the reign of Rehoboam, Moab seems to have been absorbed into the northern realm. It continued in vassalage to the kingdom of Israel unto the death of Ahab, which according to E.R. Thiel's reckoning was in about 853 BCE, when the Moabites refused to pay tribute and asserted their independence, making war upon the kingdom of Judah. 2 Chronicles 22 and 1. After the death of Ahab in about 853 BCE, the Moabites under Mesha rebelled against Jehoram, who allied himself with Jehoshaphat, king of the kingdom of Judah, and with the king of Edom. According to the Bible, the prophet Elisha directed the Israelites to dig a series of ditches between themselves and the enemy. And during the night, these channels were miraculously filled with water, which appeared red as blood in the morning light. According to the biblical account, the crimson color deceived the Moabites into thinking that the Israelites and their allies had attacked one another. Eager to acquire plunder, they were ambushed and defeated by the Israelites. 2 Kings chapter 3. According to Mesha's inscription on the Mesha stele, however, he was completely victorious and regained all the territory of which Israel had deprived him. This battle is the last important date in the history of the Moabites as recorded in the Bible. In the year of Elisha's death, they invaded Israel, 2 Kings 13 and 20, and later aided Nebuchadnezzar in his expedition against Jehoiakim in 2 Kings 24 verse 2. Allusions to Moab are frequent in the prophetical books: Isaiah 25 and 10, Ezekiel 25, 8 to 11, Amos 2, 1 to 3, Zephaniah 2, verses 8 to 11. 2 chapters of Isaiah 15 and 16 and 1 of Jeremiah 48 are devoted to the burden of Moab. Its prosperity and pride, which the Israelites believed incurred the wrath of God, are frequently mentioned. Isaiah 16 verse 6, Jeremiah chapter 48 verses 11 to 29, Zephaniah chapter 2 verse 10, and their contempt for Israel is once expressly noted, Jeremiah chapter 48 verse 27. Moab would be dealt with during the time of the Messiah's rulership, according to the prophets. The book of Zephaniah states that Moab would become a permanent desolation. Moab is also made reference to in the Second Maccabean, a book considered canonical in the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. In that text, a Moabite king named Maccabeus joins forces with Edom and Amalek to attack Israel, later repenting of his sins and adopting the Israelite religion. In Jewish tradition, according to the Hebrew Bible, the Moabites were not hospitable to the Israelites who exited Egypt and hired Balaam to curse them. As a consequence, male Moabites were excluded by Torah law from marrying Jewish women. The term 10th generation, used in connection with that prohibition, is considered an idiom used for an unlimited time, as opposed to the third generation, which allows an Egyptian convert to marry into the community. The Talmud expresses the view that the prohibition applied only to male Moabites who were not allowed to marry born Jews or legitimate converts. Female Moabites, when converted to Judaism, were permitted to marry, with only the normal prohibition of a convert marrying a Kohen priest applying. How does that make any sense? Still unclean. However, the prohibition was not allowed during the Babylonian captivity, and Ezra and Nehemiah sought to compel a return to the law because men had been marrying women who had not been converted at all. Ezra chapter 9, verses 1 to 2, Nehemiah chapter 13, verses 23 to 25. The heir of King Solomon was Rehoboam, the son of an Ammonite woman, Naamah. 1 Kings 14, verse 21. On the other hand, the marriages of the Bethlehem Ephrathites of the tribe of Judah, Mahlon and Chilion, to the Moabite women Orpah and Ruth chapter 1, verses 2 through 4, and the marriage of the latter after her husband's death to Boaz, Ruth chapter 4, verses 10 through 13, who by her was the great grandfather of David, are mentioned with no shade of reproach. The Talmudic explanation, however, is that the language of the law applies only to Moabite and Ammonite men. Hebrew, like all Semitic languages, has grammatical gender. The Talmud also states that the prophet Samuel wrote the book of Ruth to settle the dispute, as the rule had been forgotten since the time of Boaz. Another interpretation is that the book of Ruth is simply reporting the events in an impartial fashion, leaving any praise or condemnation to be done by the reader. Okay, let's take a look at something right quick. Okay. So in Deuteronomy 7 and 3, it says, "You must not intermarry with them. Do not let your daughters and sons marry their sons and daughters. Do not intermarry with them. Do not give your daughters to their sons or take their daughters for your sons. You shall not intermarry with them, giving your daughters to their sons or taking their daughters for your sons. Do not intermarry with them. Do not give your daughters to their sons or take their daughters for your sons." How many times does this have to be translated? Neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son. Okay? All right. I'm not going to finish reading all of the translations. You should get my point. Neither the son nor the daughter was to be taken as a mate. So, the Babylonian Talmud in Yevamot 76b explains that one of the reasons was the Ammonites did not greet the children of Israel with friendship, and the Moabites hired Balaam to curse them. The difference in the responses of the two people led to God allowing the Jewish people to harass the Moabites but not go to war, but forbade them to even harass the Ammonites. Deuteronomy 23, verses 3 to 4. Jehoash was one of the four men who pretended to be gods. He was persuaded thereto, particularly by the princes, who said to him, "Wert thou not a god, thou couldst not come out alive from the Holy of the Holies?" He was assassinated by two of his servants, one of whom was the son of an Ammonite woman, and the other the offspring of a Moabite. 2 Chronicles 24 and 26. For God said, "Let the descendants of the two ungrateful families chastise the ungrateful Joash." Moab and Ammon were the two offspring of Lot's incest with his two daughters, as described in Genesis 19:30 to 38. Jehoshaphat subsequently joined Jehoram of Israel in a war against the Israelites. I'm sorry. In a war against the Moabites, who were under tribute to Israel. The Moabites were subdued, but seeing Mesha's act of offering his own son and singular heir as a propitiatory human sacrifice on the walls of Ker of Moab, filled Israel with horror, and they withdrew and returned to their own land. According to the book of Jeremiah, Moab was exiled to Babylon for his arrogance and idolatry. According to Rashi, it was also due to their gross ingratitude, even though Abraham, Israel's ancestor, had saved Lot, Moab's ancestor, from Sodom. Jeremiah prophesies that Moab's captivity will be returned in the end of days. The book of Zephaniah states that Moab will assuredly be like Sodom, and the sons of Ammon like Gomorrah, ground overgrown with weeds and full of salt mines, and a permanent desolation. The prophecy regarding their defeat by the Israelites is linked to the conquest by the Jewish Hasmonean king Alexander Jannaeus. During that period, the Moabites were called the Arabian Moabites. Boundaries in the Hebrew Bible. In Ezekiel 25, verse 9, the boundaries are given as being marked by Beth Jeshimoth, north, Baal Meon, east, and Kirathaim, south. That these limits were not fixed, however, is plain from the list of cities given in Isaiah 15 through 16 and Jeremiah 48, where Heshbon, Eliela, and Jazer are mentioned to the north of Beth Jeshimoth, Madaba, Beth Gamel, and Mephaath, to the east of Baal Meon and Dibon, Aurora, Bezer, Jahaz, and Ker Hareseth, to the south of Kiriathaim. The principal rivers of Moab mentioned in the Bible are the Arnon, the Dibon or Dimon, and the Nimrim. In the north are a number of long, deep ravines and Mount Nebo, famous as the scene of the death of Moses. The territory occupied by Moab at the period of its greatest extent, before the invasion of the Amorites, divided itself naturally into three distinct and independent portions. The enclosed corner or canton south of the Arnon, referred to in the Bible as Field of Moab, Ruth chapter 1, verses 1, 2, and 6. The more open, rolling country north of the Arnon, opposite Jericho, and up to the hills of Gilead, called the land of Moab, Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 5, and chapter 32, verse 49. And the district below sea level in the tropical depths of the Jordan Valley, Numbers chapter 22, verse 1. Religion. References to the religion of Moab are scant. Most of the Moabites followed the ancient Semitic religion like other ancient Semitic speaking peoples, and the book of Numbers says that they induced the Israelites to join in their sacrifices. Numbers 25, verse 2, Judges 10, verse 6. Their chief god seems to have been Chumash, and the Bible refers to them as the people of Chumash. Numbers 21:29, Jeremiah 48, verse 46. During the Iron Age, several Moabite cultic sites have been found in places such as Deir Allah, Damia, Ataraz, or Kerbet al-Mudana. According to Second Kings, at times, especially in dire peril, human sacrifices were offered to Shamash as by Mesha, who gave up his son and heir to him. Second Kings 3, verse 27. Nevertheless, King Solomon built a high place for Shamash on the hill before Jerusalem, which the Bible describes as this detestation of Moab. The altar was not destroyed until the reign of Josiah in 2 Kings 23, verse 13. The Moabite stone also mentions, line 17, a female counterpart of Chemosh, Ashtar Chemosh. The Moabite language was spoken in Moab. It was a Canaanite language closely related to Biblical Hebrew, Ammonite, and Edomite, and was written using a variant of the Phoenician alphabet. Most of our knowledge of it comes from the Mesha Stele, which is the only known extensive text in this language. In addition, there are the 3-line El Karak inscription and a few seals. Okay, so this is Moab, Utah. So Moab is the largest city and the county seat of Grand County in eastern Utah in the western United States, known for its dramatic scenery. The population was 5,366 at the 2020 census. Moab attracts many tourists annually, mostly visitors to the nearby Arches and Canyonlands national parks. The town is a popular base for mountain bikers who ride the extensive network or trails, including the Slick Rock Trail, and for off-roaders who come for the annual Moab Jeep Safari. Moab is home to one of the 9 regional campuses of Utah State University. History, early years. Residents named the town Moab in 1880. In the Bible, this term refers to an area of land located on the eastern side of the Jordan River. Some historians believe the city in Utah came to use this name because of William Andrew Pierce, the first postmaster, here we go with the mail again, believing that the biblical Moab and this part of Utah were both the far country. However, others believe the name has Paiute origins, referring to the word Moapa, Moapa, meaning mosquito. Interesting. Bloodsuckers. Some of the area's early residents attempted to change the city's name because in the Christian Bible, Moabites are demeaned as incestuous and idolatrous. But note, Ruth was a Moabite. One petition in 1890 had 59 signatures and requested a name change to Vina, Vina. Another effort attempted to change the name to Uvadalia. Both attempts failed. During the period between 1829 and the early 1850s, the area around what is now Moab served as the Colorado River crossing along the old Spanish Trail. Latter-day Saint settlers attempted to establish a trading fort at the river crossing called the Elk Mountain Mission in April 1855 to trade with travelers attempting to cross the river. 40 men were called on this mission. There were repeated Indian attacks, including one on September 23rd, 1855, in which James Hunt, companion to Peter Stubbs, was shot and killed by a Native American. After this last attack, the fort was abandoned. A new group of settlers from Rich County, led by Randolph Hockaday Stewart, established a permanent settlement in 1878 under the direction of Brigham Young. Moab was incorporated as a town on December 20th, 1902. In 1883, the Denver and Rio Grande Western Railroad main line was constructed across eastern Utah. The rail line did not pass through Moab, instead passing through the towns of Thompson Springs, 38 miles, 61 kilometers, and Cisco, 47 miles, 76 kilometers to the north. Later, other places to cross the Colorado were constructed, such as Lee's Ferry, Navajo Bridge, and Boulder Dam. These changes shifted the trade routes away from Moab. Moab farmers and merchants had to adapt from trading with passing travelers to shipping their goods to distant markets. Soon, Moab's origins as one of the few natural crossings of the Colorado River were forgotten. Nevertheless, the U.S. military deemed the bridge over the Colorado River at Moab important enough to place it under guard as late as World War II. In 1940, all right. So these changes shifted the trade routes away from Moab. Moab farmers and merchants had to adapt from trading with passing travelers to shipping their goods to distant markets. Soon, Moab's origins as one of the few natural crossings of the Colorado River were forgotten. Nevertheless, the U.S. military. Oh, I read that. Sorry, they shut my screens down. Okay. In 1943, a former civilian conservation corps camp outside Moab was used as a citizen isolation center to confine Japanese American internees labeled troublemakers by authorities in the War Relocation Authority, the government body responsible for overseeing the wartime incarceration program. The Moab Isolation Center for Non-Compliant Japanese Americans was created in response to growing resistance to WRA policies within the camps. A December 1942 clash between guards and inmates known as the Manzanar Riot, in which 2 were killed and 10 injured, was the final push. On January 11th, 1943, the 16 men who had initiated the two-day protest were transferred to Moab from the town jails where they were booked without charges or access to hearings after the riot. Having closed just 15 months prior, all 18 military-style structures of the CCC camp were in good condition, and the site was converted to its new use with minimal renovation. 150 military police guarded the camp, and Director Raymond Best and Head of Security Francis Frederick presided over administration. On February 18th, 13 transfers from Gila River, Arizona, were brought to Moab, and 6 days later, 10 more arrived from Manzanar. An additional 15 Tule Lake inmates were transferred on April 2nd. Most of these new arrivals were removed from the general camp population because of their resistance to the WRA's attempts to determine the loyalty of incarcerated Japanese Americans, met largely with confusion and anger because of a lack of explanation as to how and why internees would be assessed. The Moab Isolation Center remained open until April 27th, when most of its inmates were moved to the larger and more secure Liab Isolation Center. 5 men serving sentences in the Grand County Jail after protesting conditions in Moab were transported to Liab in a 5 by 6 foot box on the back of a truck. Their separate transfer was arranged by Francis Frederick, who had also handed down their prison sentences using a law he later rescinded to charge them with unlawful assembly. In 1994, the Dalton Wells CCC Camp Moab Relocation Center was added to the National Register of Historic Places, and although no marker exists on the site, an information plaque at the current site entrance and a photograph on display at the Dan O'Lory Museum in Moab mention the former isolation center. So something about the refugee camps that were mentioned in the Bible. The refugee camps, we'll go into detail on that later. Oh my goodness. It's just broke. I need my money back. Let me write this down. The refugee camps in Utah. Refugee camps, Moab, Utah, or Native American refugees. Something about the Fugees, Lauren Hill, the hilltop. Hills have eyes. Pyramid head. What am I talking about? Okay. So in the later years, when I get done with this, I'm gonna be done. Moab's economy was originally based on agriculture, but gradually shifted to mining. Uranium and vanadium were discovered in the area in the 1910s and 1920s. What is uranium, Aiden? It's used for nuclear weapons? It's used for nuclear stuff because it has nuclear properties. Ah. Thank you, son. So, potash and manganese came next, and then oil and gas were discovered. In the 1950s, Moab became the so-called uranium capital of the world. Wow, okay. After After geologist Charles Steen found a rich deposit of uranium ore south of the city. This discovery coincided with the advent of the era of nuclear weapons. There you go, right there. Nuclear weapons and nuclear power in the United States, and Moab's boom years began. Oh, it's giving Mr. Burns and The Simpsons. Nuclear power plant? Hmm. The city population grew nearly 500% over the next few years, bringing the population to near 6,000 people. The explosion in population caused much construction of houses and schools. Charles Steen donated a great deal of money and land to create new houses and churches in Moab. With the winding down of the Cold War, Moab's uranium boom was over and the city's population drastically declined. By the early 1980s, a number of homes stood empty and nearly all of the uranium mines had closed. In 1949, Western movie director John Ford was persuaded to use the area for the movie Wagon Master. Ford had been using the area in Monument Valley around Mexican Hat, Utah, south of Moab, since he filmed Stagecoach there 10 years earlier in 1939. A local Moab rancher, George White, found Ford and persuaded him to come take a look at Moab. The Moab to Monument Valley Film Commission is a Moab City department and holds the title of the longest running film commission in the world. Established in 1949, the commission has overseen the production of the many movies filmed near Moab. And now this is giving uh, The Truman Show. In recent years, Moab has experienced a surge of second homeowners. The relatively mild winters and enjoyable summers have attracted many people to build such homes throughout the area. In a situation mirroring that of other resort towns in the American West, controversy has arisen over these new residents and their houses, which in many cases remain unoccupied for most of the year. Many Moab citizens are concerned that the town is seeing changes similar to those experienced in Vail and Aspen in neighboring Colorado. Skyrocketing property values, a rising cost of living, and corresponding effects on local low and middle income workers. Cultural events. Moab hosts several cultural events and festivals, including the Moab Music Festival, LGBT Pride Festival, Folk Festival, Skinny Tire Festival, and others. The annual music festival occurs in September and was founded in 1992 by several musicians from New York. The Moab Folk Festival features concerts by numerous folk musicians every November. Since 2011, Moab has hosted an LGBT Pride Festival. The first festival included a visibility march which drew more than 350 people, and its second year's festival had over 600 in attendance. The Skinny Tire Festival is a road bike festival that occurs in March each year and raises funds for cancer research and survivors. Additionally, Moab sponsors the Moab Art Walk at multiple venues throughout the year, highlighting local artists' work. Geography. Moab is just south of the Colorado River at an elevation of 4,025 feet or 1,227 meters on the Colorado Plateau. It is 18 miles, 29 kilometers west of the Utah-Colorado state line. Via U.S. Route 191, it is 31 miles, 50 kilometers south of Interstate 70 at Crescent Junction, and it is 54 miles, 87 kilometers north of Monticello. Via Utah State Route 128, it is 46 miles, 74 kilometers south of Cisco. The entrance to Arches National Park is 4 miles, 6 kilometers north of Moab on US 191. Hurrah Pass is located on the trail between Moab and Chicken Corners. Cocopelli's Trail, a 142-mile mountain biking trail which begins near Loma, Colorado, ends in Moab. According to the United States Census Bureau, the city has a total area of 12 square kilometers or 4.8 square miles, all land. The climate. Moab has a semi-arid climate bordering an arid Köppen as characterized by hot summers and chilly winters, with precipitation evenly spread over the year, usually less than 1 inch per month. There are an average of 41 days with temperatures reaching 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 38 degrees Celsius, 109 days reaching 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 32 degrees Celsius, and 3.6 days per winter where the temperature remains at or below freezing. The highest temperature was 114 degrees Fahrenheit, 46 degrees Celsius on July 7, 1989. The lowest temperature was negative 24 degrees or negative 31 degrees Celsius on January 22nd, 1930. Average annual precipitation in Moab is 9.02 inches or 229 millimeters. There are an average of 55 days annually with measurable precipitation. The wettest year was 1983 with 16.42 inches or 417 millimeters, and the driest year was 1898 with 4.32 inches, 110 millimeters. The most precipitation in 1 month was 6.63 inches. In July 1918, the most precipitation in 24 hours was 2.77 inches, 70 millimeters on July 23, 1983. Average seasonal snowfall for 1981 to 2011 is 6.9 inches or 18 centimeters. The most snow in a season was 74 inches or 190 centimeters during 1914 through 15, and the snowiest month on average is December, with the record set in 1915 at 46 inches. Whew. Demographics. As the census of 2000, there were 4,779 people, 1,936 households, and 1,169 families residing in the city. The population density was 1,313.1 people per square mile, or 506.9 kilometers per squared. There were 2,148 housing units at an average density of 590.2 per square mile or 227.8 kilometers squared. The racial makeup of the city was 90.35% white, 5.46% Native American, 0.36% African American, 0.29% Asian, 0.08% Pacific Islander, 1.88% from other races, and 1.57% from 2 or more races. Hispanic or Latino of any race were 6.44% of the population. There were 1,936 households, out of which 30.5% had children under the age of 18 living with them. 44.4% were married couples living together. 12.3% had a female householder with no husband present, and 39.6% were non-families. 31.3% of all households were made up of individuals, and 11.4% had some living alone who was 65 years of age or older. The average household size was 2.43, and the average family size was 3.10. In the city, the population was spread out with 27.6% under the age of 18, 8.7% from 18 to 24, 28.5% from 25 to 44, 21.6% from 45 to 64, and 13.6% who were 65 years of age or older. The median age was 36 years. For every 100 females, there were 95.1 males. For every 100 females aged 18 and over, there were 92.7 males. The median income for a household in the city was $32,620, and the median income for a family The median income for a household in the city was $32,620, and the median income for a family was $38,214. Males had a median income of $35,291 versus $21,339 for females. The per capita income for the city was $16,228. About 12% of families and 15.7% of the population were below the poverty line, including 19.1% of those under age 18 and 10.5% of those age 65 or over. Education. The following public schools serve Moab students: Helen M. Knight Elementary School, Moab Charter School, Margaret L. Hopkins Middle School, and Grand County High School. Moab is home to a regional campus of Utah State University. Films shot in the Moab area include Wagon Master of 1950, Rio Grande 1950, Warlock 1958, Rio Conchos 1964, Fade In 1968, Nightmare at Noon 1988, Sundown, The Vampire in Retreat 1988, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade 1989, Lightning Jack 1994, Riders of the Purple Sage 1996, Rocket Man 1997, Breakdown 1997, and John Carter of 2012. Books set partially in Moab include Fall or Dodge in Hell 2019, Desert Solitaire 1968, The Scholar of Moab 2011, The Man Who Quit Money in 2012. The infrastructure, transportation. Prior to the construction of the railroad in 1883, Moab was a strategic place to cross the Colorado River. A toll ferry service across the river ended when a permanent bridge was built in 1911, 1911. This bridge was replaced with a new bridge in 1955, which was in turn replaced by another new bridge in 2010. The 1955 bridge was subsequently demolished. The highway that uses this bridge has been renumbered multiple times and is now numbered US Route 191. Moab gained freight railroad access in 1962 when a spur railroad line, now the Union Pacific Railroad's Cane Creek subdivision, was built to serve the Cane Creek Potash Mine. Moab has never had passenger rail service, although the California Zephyr has advertised service to Moab in the past via stops at Thompson Springs, no longer a scheduled stop, Green River or Grand Junction, Colorado. Beginning on August 15, 2021, the excursion company Rocky Mountaineer began operating passenger rail service between Moab and Denver, Colorado, in the form of the Rockies to the Red Rocks. Bus service is provided by Salt Lake Express. There are a number of locally owned shuttle services that provide transportation to Salt Lake City and Grand Junction, Colorado. Air service is available at Canyonlands Field with daily nonstop flights to Denver International Airport via SkyWest Airlines and United Express. Okay. 129 on the climber. So we're going to leave it here. And on the next video, we will cover the refugee camps of that the Bible speaks of in these, and then we're going to talk about the water sources that the salt mines, and the limestone quarries of the area and how it coincides with the Bible stories. Okay, guys, once again, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening in. Again, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We will be back soon. Peace to the Middle East from the Midwest.